Tolerance by E.M. Forster. Surely the only sound foundation for civilization is a sound state of mind. Here, sound is being used in the sense of something that's rightly constructed with all its parts in the right places. A thing that is in correct working order. Something that's strong, able to withstand pressure. Architects, contractors, international commissioners, marketing boards, broadcasting corporations will never by themselves build a new world. They must be inspired by the proper spirit. And there must be the proper spirit in the people for whom they are working. What, though, is the proper spirit? So here the word spirit is being used over and over. Spirit here is being used as the attitude in which a person approaches issues, interactions, or conflicts, right? What, though, is the proper spirit? There must be a sound state of mind before diplomacy or economics or trade conferences can function. But what state of mind is sound? So here we have this idea of soundness being brought in again. What state of mind is sound? Here we may differ. Forster says, most people, when asked what spiritual qualities needed to rebuild civilization, will reply, love. Men must love one another, they say. Nations must do likewise. And then the series of cataclysms, which is threatening to destroy us, will be checked. A cataclysm is a deeply disastrous occurrence, something that's very bad. Here, it's bad for civilization. Being checked means being controlled, being limited. Respectfully but firmly, I disagree. Love is a great force in private life. It is indeed the greatest of all things. But love in public affairs does not work. It has been tried again and again by the Christian civilizations of the Middle Ages and also by the French Revolution, a secular movement which reasserted the brotherhood of man. So here, reasserted means put forward an idea as true, usually without proof. So asserted means to put forward an idea as true, and reasserted means it's being put forward again. So brotherhood has been put forward many times before the French Revolution as an idea that could be what a sound civilization could be built on. Here, it's being put forward again in the French Revolution. But Forster says, and it has always failed. So the idea of love or brotherhood as the great force that will bring together or bring back a civilization after war has always failed, he says. The idea that nations should love one another, or that business concerns or marketing boards should love one another, or that a man in Portugal should love a man in Peru of whom he has never heard, it is absurd, unreal, dangerous. It leads us into perilous and vague sentimentalism. Sentimentalism means excessive and shallow emotional behavior. So to be sentimental is to be kind of overly lovey-dovey. Love is what is needed, we chant, and then sit back, and the world goes on as before. So this is the danger he's proposing of thinking that love can solve everything, is that people talk about love as being the solution all the time. And what they do is they just say it, we chant it, but then they just go back to their lives as before, thinking that love on its own, whatever love means to people, will just carry on and just accomplish what needs to be done, when in reality, more than just saying we should love each other is needed. The fact is, we can only love what we know personally, and we cannot know much. In public affairs, in the rebuilding of civilization, something much less dramatic and emotional is needed, namely, tolerance. Tolerance is a very dull virtue. It is boring. Unlike love, it has always had a bad press. It is negative. It merely means putting up with people, being able to stand things. No one has ever written an ode to tolerance or raised a statue to her. Yet this is the quality which will be most needed after the war. And the war that he's referring to is World War II, which ended in 1945. This is the sound state of mind which we are looking for. This is the only force which will enable different races and classes and interests to settle down together to the work of reconstruction. Reconstruction is a word that's typically used as the process that follows war. It's a process of rebuilding that must usually occur after a war has been fought. Not only a reconstruction of the buildings that have been razed by the war, that means destroyed by the war, but also of institutions and beliefs that people once held and probably no longer hold during the war because they've become so disillusioned and because they've lost so much. The world is very full of people, appallingly full. It has never been so full before, and they are all tumbling over each other. Most of these people one doesn't know, and some of them one doesn't like. Doesn't like the color of their skins, say, or the shape of their noses, or the way they blow them or don't blow them, or the way they talk, or their smell, or their clothes, or their fondness for jazz, or their dislike of jazz, and so on. Well, what's one to do? So here's a rhetorical question. What do you do when you have all this dislike? Forster proposes that there are two solutions. One of them is the Nazi solution. If you don't like people, kill them, banish them, segregate them, and then strut up and down proclaiming that you are the salt of the earth. The other way is much less thrilling, but it is on the whole the way of democracies, and I prefer it. If you don't like people, put up with them as well as you can. Don't try to love them. You can't. You'll only strain yourself. But try to tolerate them. On the basis of that tolerance, a civilized future may be built. Certainly, I can see no other foundation for the post-war world. For what it will most need is the negative virtues. Not being huffy, touchy, irritable, revengeful. I've lost all faith in positive militant ideals. They can so seldom be carried out without thousands of human beings getting maimed or imprisoned. Phrases like, I will purge this nation, I will clean up this city, terrify and disgust me. They might not have mattered when the world was emptier. They're horrifying now, when one nation is mixed up with another, when one city cannot be organically separated from its neighbors. It's interesting to consider what he means when he says the negative virtues. Because virtues are by definition good things, positive things. So how can a virtue be negative? What's a negative virtue? Tolerance, he said earlier, has a negative connotation to it because all it's saying is it's not proposing anything as grand as love. All it's saying is just put up with those that are around you. You may not love them. Don't even try to love them, he says. But put up with them. So putting up with is what tolerance is all about, and that's negative because it doesn't seem like it's enough. You know, it's enough to get by, but it doesn't seem like it's enough to build anything. But he's saying that this minimalist virtue, this negative virtue, is the one that seems like it could work, when love, the grand virtue, might not work, has been tried, and has never worked. He continues, I don't then regard tolerance as a great, eternally established divine principle, though I might perhaps quote, in my Father's house are many mansions, in support of such a view. It's just a makeshift. So he's saying now, tolerance, it's not grand, it's not a divine principle, it's just a makeshift. It's just something that we're going to use because we have nothing else. It's just a makeshift, suitable for an overcrowded and overheated planet. It carries on when love gives out, and love generally gives out as soon as we move away from our home and our friends and stand among strangers in a queue for potatoes. So this image of people standing together as strangers in a line, waiting for potatoes, waiting for somebody to give them some food, is what often happens in war, rationing. Tolerance is wanted in the queue. Otherwise, we think, why will people be so slow? It is wanted in the tube. The tube is the subway. It is wanted in the tube. Or why will people be so fat? It is wanted at the telephone. Or why are they so deaf? Or conversely, why do they mumble? It is wanted in the street, in the office, at the factory. And it is wanted above all between classes, races, and nations. It's dull. And yet it entails imagination. For you have all the time to be putting yourself in someone else's place, which is a desirable spiritual exercise.